5 years into marriage, when most couples start talking seriously about children and long-term plans, one confession can rewind everything to the very first week. Tonight's story isn't about a recent affair. It's about a secret that was buried at the beginning, a mistake made during the first week of marriage. He thought he knew how their story started. But he was wrong. Hi everyone, my name is Mia, and today I want to tell you about a man who discovered that sometimes the most destabilizing betrayal isn't what happened yesterday, it's what happened at the very beginning, and was hidden long enough to feel like the foundation itself might be cracked. Ethan was 25 when his wife told him the truth, and until that evening he would have described himself as lucky. He had married young, grown up alongside his wife Claire, and quietly taken pride in being more stable than most of the men his age. While others were still navigating breakups and casual relationships, Ethan had built a home. He liked that about himself. It made him feel grounded, mature, and chosen. The confession came during a conversation about having children. They had been discussing timing, finances, whether they were ready for the responsibility, and Claire suddenly grew quiet in a way that did not feel thoughtful but heavy. Ethan assumed she was nervous about motherhood, and he leaned in with reassurance already forming in his mind. Instead, she told him that during the first week of their marriage, while he had gone to bed early because of work the next morning, she had gone out with friends. She ended up at a small party, met a man, talked longer than she should have, drank more than she should have, and made a decision she regretted almost immediately. She came home a few hours later, slipped into bed beside him while he was asleep, and never spoke about it again, until now. Ethan did not explode. The reaction surprised even him. His body responded before his voice did, his jaw tightened, his chest felt compressed, and a faint buzzing filled his ears, but he remained composed on the surface. He asked measured questions because asking questions felt safer than expressing pain. Was it only once? Did you ever see him again? Did anyone know? Claire answered steadily, it was one night. There was no continued contact. She cut it off immediately. She told him the guilt had followed her for years, especially during anniversaries, especially when he spoke about how proud he was of the life they were building. What unsettled Ethan was not only the act itself, but the timing. It happened during the first week of their marriage. While he was asleep in their bed as a newly married husband, believing they were beginning something sacred, she was somewhere else making a decision that contradicted everything he thought that week represented. That image began to loop in his mind. He imagined the clock on the nightstand glowing in the dark. He imagined himself asleep, vulnerable, unaware. He imagined her returning home, quietly changing clothes, lying beside him with a secret already formed. Over the next few days, Ethan found himself moving through the house differently. He did not tell anyone. He considered calling his older brother, but the words felt impossible to say out loud. He imagined the subtle shift in how people would look at him if they knew his marriage had begun with betrayal. That thought made him protective of the secret, even though he was the one who had been wronged. At night he struggled to sleep. When Claire drifted off, he lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying scenarios he wished he could erase. He began questioning details that had never bothered him before. Had she ever mentioned that party? Had there been other nights he dismissed too easily? If she could hide that once, how certain was he that it had truly been the only time? One evening, while she was in the shower, he picked up her phone without fully deciding to. His hands felt steady, but his stomach tightened as he scrolled through years of messages, photos, archived conversations. He did not find evidence of ongoing betrayal. What he found instead was ordinariness, which almost made him angrier because it forced him to confront a more complicated truth. She had become faithful long ago. He compared himself to the unnamed man from that night even though he knew nothing about him. In Ethan's mind the man became everything he feared he was not, more spontaneous, more exciting, less predictable. He looked at himself in the mirror longer than usual one morning, noticing how young he still was yet suddenly feeling older. The real fracture, however, was internal. Ethan began questioning whether the marriage he had proudly defended for 6 years had ever truly been what he thought it was. He wondered if their foundation had been cracked from the beginning and he simply never saw it because he wanted to believe in the story of them. One night, after a quiet dinner filled with careful conversation, Ethan opened the closet and pulled out a suitcase. He did not announce anything. He stood there staring at it, imagining what it would feel like to leave first, to reclaim control, to refuse to build a family on something that started with deception. The idea gave him a brief sense of power, but it also terrified him. Leaving would mean admitting that a mistake made at 20 still had authority over the man he had become at 25. Claire noticed the shift in him. She asked if he was thinking about ending the marriage. Ethan did not answer directly. He asked her instead why she had chosen to tell him now. She said she could not move forward into parenthood without being honest about the past. She said she had grown up since then, that she was not the same person she had been in that first week. She admitted that part of her feared losing him but feared building a future on silence even more. Ethan believed that she regretted it. That was not the issue. The issue was that the betrayal had been woven into the very origin of their marriage, and no amount of present-day sincerity could erase that. He considered revenge in fleeting, private ways. He imagined downloading a dating app just to feel desired. He imagined confessing the story publicly so he would not be the only one carrying it. He did none of it, because he understood that acting out would not restore what he felt had been taken. The deeper question began to surface slowly: was he hurt because of what she did, or because it challenged the identity he had built around being the man whose marriage started clean? That question disturbed him more than the affair itself. Weeks passed without resolution. They continued living together, functioning, speaking politely, but something invisible had shifted. Ethan no longer saw their early photos the same way. He looked at their wedding album and felt a subtle discomfort, knowing that within days of those pictures being taken, the narrative had already splintered. One evening Claire asked him directly whether he thought they could survive it. Ethan realized that forgiveness was not the simple opposite of anger. Forgiveness, in this case, meant accepting that the beginning of his marriage would never feel untouched again. It meant choosing to love a woman who had once betrayed him at the most symbolic moment possible. He did not give her a clear answer that night. What he did say was this: he needed time to understand whether he could live with the story as it truly was, not as he once believed it to be. And that uncertainty lingered between them, heavier than any argument. Some betrayals are loud and immediate. Others are buried so deeply in the past that when they surface, they force you to question not only your partner but your own identity. Ethan discovered that what hurt him most was not just the act itself, but the realization that the story he told himself about his marriage was incomplete. The foundation was not false, but it was flawed from the beginning, and that knowledge changed the way he saw everything that followed. Whether he ultimately stays or leaves is less important than this: once the origin of trust is shaken, rebuilding it is no longer about love alone. It becomes a question of pride, memory, and whether you can accept a truth that permanently reshapes your past. If you were in Ethan's position, would you see this as a mistake from youth that time has already paid for, or would you feel that a betrayal during the first week of marriage changes everything? Tell me honestly in the comments what you would do. And if you appreciate emotionally honest stories like this, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one. Bye.